Welcome to Wellness in the Wilderness. Come with us on the trail of life as we inspire you to take a step outdoors, to disconnect from the distractions and reconnect with yourself. Sydney Williams and her guests will motivate you to get active and get well. Now, here is Sydney.
Welcome to Wellness in the Wilderness. I'm your host, Sydney Williams, author and founder of Hiking My Feelings. And today we are recording in Sequoia National Park, the ancestral lands of the Western Mono, Tubatlatl, Yokut, Paiute, and Western Shoshone people. In this mini-season sponsored by Sawyer Products, we're celebrating 5 years of Hiking My Feelings by sharing conversations with 5 women who have been incredibly inspirational or instrumental in this journey so far. Today, I'm joined by Katie Wightman, former director of the Field Institute for the Sequoia Parks Conservancy, the intro that changed my life as far as our programming here at Hiking My Feelings. And we're also joined by the yellow-rumped warbler and the golden-crowned kinglet, so you might hear some bird noise in the background. Today, we're recording at the historic Wolverton Service Camp, which has served communities since time immemorial. This used to be a pass-through place and summer camp for the indigenous tribes that used to come through the Sierras to escape the heat down in the foothills. It's also the former home of the Boy Scouts of America and a bunch of other groups, an artist colony back in the day, and now we are, and by we I mean me and Barry, we are camp hosting here and working with the Volunteers in Parks Project here at Sequoia National Park. And this is where all the volunteers come that are coming to do service projects within the park, including ecologists, researchers, biologists, anybody and everybody that's trying to make this park a better place and protect it and preserve it for generations to come stays here if they need a spot to stay overnight. So Katie, hi.
Hi. Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks for being here. If you could start us off, just tell us a little bit about yourself. I mean, I gave your former title, but what are you up to and how did you get here?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I was a former Field Institute director for the Sequoia Parks Conservancy, but I've been working in Sequoia and Kings Canyon since 2012. But I have been actually a part of this place since, I guess, forever. I grew up just right in the foothills of Sequoia and Kings, so Sequoia and Kings was definitely in my backyard growing up, and I've always felt just really drawn to these mountains. These mountains are special, and so grew up kind of gallivanting in the Sierra Nevada, and eventually led me to working in the parks for SPC, and I started out just as a seasonal worker working at Crystal Cave as a naturalist, and eventually became the Crystal Cave manager and managed that site for 6-7 years for a while, and then eventually wrapped up my time with SPC as a Field Institute director, where I was able to help direct and kind of steer the educational branch of the Sequoia Parks Conservancy, working really closely with the National Park Service to really just connect people both intellectually and emotionally to the parks. That was kind of our goal and our vision, and doing that together and doing that in a way where people could just see themselves and find themselves in this place.
Yes, this place has so much history and has healed so many people. The history of mental health in this park is incredible, and I want to touch on that in a bit, but to kind of ground us in this place and what the Sequoia Parks Conservancy does, could you talk to us a little bit about the role of the nonprofit partners of the national parks themselves and how Sequoia works with NPS to bring that to life?
Absolutely. So not a lot of people realize that a lot of national parks have a nonprofit partner that helps them to essentially manage that area of land, manage that national park. And the nonprofits come alongside to support the national parks in any way that they can, whether that be from an educational standpoint, a philanthropic standpoint, helping in the visitor centers, on a retail standpoint. I always tell people, sometimes people don't realize that when they go to a national park, they take away a memory with them from buying something in the bookstore. Whether it's a magnet, a patch, a book, a postcard, whatever it might be, it's something that helps them to connect back to the experience and how they felt when they were in the national park. And the nonprofits help make that happen by supplying all of those supplies and helping to facilitate that experience, or helping facilitate an educational experience or a philanthropic experience in the parks. And with the Sequoia Parks Conservancy here in Sequoia and Kings Canyon does exactly that. We help manage the retail operation in the parks. We help manage the Field Institute, which is the educational branch of the Sequoia Parks Conservancy, and we also help the parks philanthropically to raise money for special projects and programs to help manage the resource or help bring people and connect people to the parks. It always comes back to supporting these parks, supporting Sequoia and Kings Canyon in whatever way is possible. And the nonprofits come alongside and work with the national parks to do that.
Awesome. So for anybody listening, if you're headed to a national park, be sure to look up those conservancies.
Absolutely.
Those they all kind of go by different names, but like Joshua Tree is the Joshua Tree National Park Association. Here we have the Sequoia Parks Conservancy. Glacier has a conservancy as well. So be sure to take a look and see if you can find those folks, support them, say hi, because without the work of these important nonprofit partners, these parks wouldn't be what they are. The federal government only provides so much funding, and these parks are critical for the continuation of the parks and their preservation. So first of all, thank you. Now, for everybody listening, the connection here between Hiking My Feelings and the Sequoia Parks Conservancy, specifically Katie Wightman, why did I pick Katie? Like, of the 5 folks that we have on this mini season, Katie has been absolutely instrumental in helping me bring my ultimate vision to life for Hiking My Feelings. When I completed my second trek across Catalina, the first thing that I did was reach out to the the Catalina Island Conservancy. I was like, hey, how do I help? And that kind of set up this curiosity for me where I had this really deep healing experience. And my first outreach was to the people that protect and manage the land. I wanted to help expand the reach of the things that they were doing. I wanted to recreate what I had experienced, because if it was true for me, if I could go on a hike and then feel like deeply connected to a place, then I am pretty sure that that's a repeatable process. So my ultimate vision for what we've wanted to do for Hiking My Feelings as far as retreats go is exactly what we're doing in Sequoia Kings right now, which is what we're calling stewardship and self-care. So the relationship between Hiking My Feelings, Sequoia Parks Conservancy, and also through the National Park Service, through the Volunteers in Parks program, specifically here at Sequoia Kings, is how this all comes to life. So our events, we do what we've been doing for the last 4 or 5 years, where we're talking about mental health in the outdoors and learning how to connect, but also the part that I really wanted to implement that I just hadn't had the opportunity to do yet was to include a stewardship project. And through, how do we even get connected? Like, I know I watched a giant conversations about fire. Did I reach out to you after that?
I'm trying to remember. I was thinking about that, of like, how did we get connected? But I think it was through Tamara, who had attended a Hiking My Feelings, and she felt so compelled, and she's like, we need to bring this to Sequoia. And after hearing just her experience and introducing us, and I was like, yeah, you're right, we do. Like, let's try to make this happen.
That's right. Oh, yeah, because I had been like, and we've been doing this stuff at Joshua Tree, and you're like, I know Kevin Wong.
Yes.
Yeah. So shout out to Kevin Wong. Thank you, sir. Love your face. Hope you're doing well.
Kevin Wong was like, Katie, you need to connect with Sydney. And I was like, I absolutely do. You're the second person. And then,
so thank you, Tamara, and Kevin Wong. Appreciate the intros. But that was one of the things, my curiosity in what had happened over the 2 previous fires, between the Castle Fire and KMP Complex Fire, and the conversations around how many sequoias were lost, really just lit a fire under me, because I had my story of connection to Sequoia started in 2019. We came through here just breezing through on our tour. We didn't stay overnight. We didn't even hike. We just came to see General Sherman. And we walked down, and we were standing outside the fence by the big fallen branch, and there was this group of guys, and one dude jumped the fence and went to go hug General Sherman. And it was one of those moments for me, and I don't know if, Katie, if you can relate, where the thought in my head came out of my mouth full volume. And so what I thought was in my head came out as, are you for real? At full volume. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is where Sydney engaged her feral forest protector mode. And I've never been the same since. So that moment where I was like, wait a minute, there is a fence around this tree for a reason. And I didn't know the reasons yet. I just knew I am a rule follower, and you don't jump fences. I was like, I want to learn as much as I can about this place. And so it was through the programs provided by Sequoia Parks Conservancy, through this giant conversations series you do, that I learned about the impacts of the fire. And as I was sitting through this webinar that Katie was facilitating with some of the folks that work here, I was just like, oh my God, like I do prescribed burns for, like, that is what mindfulness is. Mindfulness and hiking for me is a prescribed burn. So all the things that are building up, all of my dead stuff on the forest floor doesn't go up in flames. Like, this is how I manage my mental health. We've got to create a program around this. And so when we talked to you, I was like, okay, so in Joshua Tree, they have this campground and it's only for NPS and Desert Institute programs. Do you have anything similar? And that's how we found out about Wolverton. So for folks that are interested in doing volunteer projects, you can look at volunteer.gov. You can reach out to the folks here at Sequoia Kings specifically. But this was like the puzzle piece that just kind of brought this all together. And now we're here recording here.
I know.
Oh my gosh. It's so wild. So shifting away a little bit from your former role, you were here, you're the reason we got here, you're the reason we're here now. Talk to us about your transition out of working with the Conservancy and what's coming up for you next. Like, where are you going next and how do you want to use those skills in new ways?
Right. Yeah, that's such a good question. So yeah, I've transitioned away from the Conservancy. I loved my work in public lands and in the national parks. In many ways, it made me who I am in a lot of ways. And I needed, I describe it as like, I needed the time in the mountains. Like I needed it. And when I was young and first starting in school, I started pursuing a career in nursing. And honestly, I was just too young and not ready. And I kind of deviated from that path and found myself working in the parks. And I was here for, 11 years. And found this connection to the space and to wilderness, and I loved. There's something, and you've probably experienced this multiple times when you lead a group and you facilitate an experience where you're connecting people to a cave for a first time, to a giant sequoia for a first time, to the stars for the first time, or in a new way where people are actually seeing it, or they take time away from their lives and they connect back to these natural places, back to the national parks, and they have this emotional connection. And to be a small part of that and facilitating that experience I thought it was one of the greatest honors that I could think of, to be a part of it in just some small way. But there is always this thing in the back of my head of this love for and this passion for nursing and really meeting people in this other really raw, vulnerable way. And it really just, one day I was hiking, and through the pandemic and through trying to figure out, like, could start to feel a shift and a change in me of knowing that like there was this other kind of like calling on my life, and trying to get back to that place. And so I made the incredibly difficult decision to start to pursue that again. And so and it was probably the hardest and easiest decision I've made, like knowing it was exactly the right thing to do, but the transition has been hard. I'm still working for the Conservancy part-time, like helping out when I can, because once you spend so much time in a place and give so much self to your organization, your heart never separates from it. And so so just pursuing now a career in nursing, and I'm just taking my prereqs and going through that and applying for programs with the ultimate goal of applying to a program in Montana and hoping to get out there, and another gravitational pull on my life, getting out that way. And that's what I'm doing right now.
I heard a couple things that I'm curious about. I think a lot of folks get stuck in, I'm too old to do something, but you knew at the beginning that you just weren't ready for nursing. So talk to me a little, like, was it that simple where you were just like, yeah, I'm not ready, I'm going to go do this instead? Or was there any kind of reckoning to pause on your pursuit of nursing back in the day, and then to bring that back around? Like, what was that journey like where was there an instance? I mean, you said you discovered this kind of nudge when you were hiking, but was there something about the pandemic or something about the way your career was unfolding that led you back to nursing?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think, you know, when I was first doing nursing, like I say, like I was too young, not ready, but I also really struggled in nursing school. There was a lot of pressure, and having some, like I struggle with test anxiety, and I was told basically that I wasn't smart enough too. And I was foolish enough to believe that. And you know, when you're like 21, 22 and you're told that, you're like, oh my gosh, maybe you're right and I'm going to hurt someone. Maybe I shouldn't do this. And I was told I went to go, you know, and no fault of their own. I went to a professor for help, and they told me like I should be an interior designer, which it was such a weird thing. I was like, no, I don't know anything about that. Like, I don't want to do that. So
that's such a random suggestion.
It was so random.
Like, not at all aligned with medicine or health or helping.
Nothing. And I was like, oh my God. But it was just enough fear and doubt created in me that I was like, wow, maybe I do need to like think beyond that, because nursing is a huge responsibility, and maybe my professors were seeing something that I wasn't seeing in myself. And so I deviated from that. But when I started working in the parks, I ended up getting my EMT and managing the Crystal Cave site. There was a need for that, and I remember how much I loved it. I loved being an EMT, and I loved providing that care. I loved providing it in a wilderness setting, and to being able to connect with people at their, you know, at an uncomfortable time where, you know, you're not only are you hurt, but you're maybe inside of a cave and you're hurt, or you're on a trail and you're hurt and you're out of your element, and you're like, how do, you know, it's jarring and scary, and to be able to bring some peace and some calm to that, I just found a lot of peace and calming, you know, where some people might be terrified by that experience. I was like, no, I love this, which is a weird thing to love. Like, I never want anybody to get hurt. But I loved being able to support someone in that time. And it was just always something that was just deep within my heart, like always trying to come to the surface, but I was too scared, I think, to let it come to the surface totally, because you get into that mode where you're like, oh, I'm too old. Like, I'm already in this career path. Like, I can't change. Like, what's going to happen to my retirement? What's going to happen to my health insurance? Like, what am I going to do? Like, how am I going to afford this? Like, I'm going to be the oldest person at a community college, like, with a bunch of, like, 18-year-olds taking prerequisite courses. Like, and I'm like that older adult learner that's, like, taking anatomy and chemistry and an algebra class. And it's been humbling, for sure. And funny. But I think when you let go of some of that fear and you allow yourself to just to be part of the journey, and also realize that there is no right or wrong way to do this thing, called life. And to trust in some of those, I guess to trust in fear, which is a weird thing to say maybe, but and just trust that, you know, I always tell people, like, it's going to come together in this really beautiful way. Everything is just going to come together, and I don't even have the imagination for it. And I'm just riding that wave, and trusting in that, as opposed to being paralyzed by the fear, I guess. So it's like this balance, I guess, between, like, yes, the fear is there. It's very, very real. The doubt is very, very real. But also there's truth in that too. Like, I want it so bad. And so it's just going through it. Yeah.
I love fear as an indicator of what we want. That's been a big lesson for me this year. Like, at the risk of either having to choose to transition to something that isn't what we're currently doing in order to survive, whenever that comes down on me, I'm like, my gut is like, no, we absolutely will not give up on what we've been building. And I'm like, oh, okay. All right, inner self, I hear you loud and clear. But I love that. And I'm curious, one of the things that you were doing last summer when we were here was you were training for, like, a big race or something. Yeah. And you, like, first of all, I just want to say, so Katie's like, I have to go do this, like, 50-mile run during the night through the giant forest. And I was like, first of all, that sounds magical. And then like the first hike we did here was sunrise from Wolverton out to Morrow and back. And I was like, we left here at 3 a.m. and every single stump looks like a bear. And it's just like, and we're under the starry night sky. I was like, and this is what Katie's life was like for a while. So I'd love to hear about how you also, because you were working here, because this has been your backyard, like what kind of wellness have you found in the wilderness that is Sequoia Kings, and how has that impacted your journey through this career transition, and has it taught you anything about leaning into that fear? Because it sounds like it might have.
Yeah. Oh gosh, that's such a good question. All your questions are good. I think being able to work and live in a national park is such a rare and unique experience, because, and it's hard and it's wonderful at the same time, because you also have millions of people from all over the world like coming, and you develop such an attachment to the place, and you want to share that with as many people, but you also want to keep it really close, and you're constantly walking that line, and you know, where I found wellness in this place is just being out in it. And where I found probably the most comfort is, and probably which ties into like my little night run, adventure, is really coming and looking at the stars, like having that connection with dark skies. And also, being able to leave out my front door for my evening walk, walking to the largest trees in the world by volume. And that, like, finding that in my recenter of like, okay, like, it was a hard day at work. Lots of things happened. What am I going to do? Okay, I'm just going to walk up to like the giant forest for a second, just for a minute, and just kind of recenter. I'm going to walk to Tokapa Falls, or I'm going to just find a piece of granite and lay out there all night, just so that way I can just like watch the night sky move. And being able to have those quiet moments to work through either emotions of the days or fears of a lifetime, was so, like, for me, that's what made the most sense, in finding connection there, to lots of different things. And I, as Sydney knows, like, when I was working for SPC, like, man, I give or if it's a Sequoia Parks Conservancy, like, you give so much like time and energy, and the hard thing about working in a national park is sometimes you only get 2 days off a week, and you have a mountain range to explore. And I was always faced with this conundrum of like, how am I going to get to this place in 2 days and back in time to go to work? You've just worked like maybe a 60-hour week or whatnot, but you're like, I just really want to get to this lake, or I wanted to like try to get this peak. And I found trail running, because I was like, wow, if I run there, I get there faster, and I can get back in time, and I can accomplish, which is a very Katie solution.
I love it.
To a problem, where I'll just run there. Like, I can do that. And that's where I found running and trail running. And, where I'm like, okay, if I want to experience a giant forest at night, maybe I just run throughout the night, which eventually led me to bigger goals, and eventually completing a 100-mile race. And with trail running too, and kind of some of those goals, it kind of was, I also had this need of knowing that I could do the hard thing. And the 100-mile race for me, or a 30-mile or a 50-mile, whatever it might be, was knowing that proving to myself that I could do hard things. And I think it was also that, as I was looking at that big transition of like, okay, no, I can do the hard thing. And I chose a very physical thing, maybe because I needed that confidence to be like, okay, if I can run 100 miles, maybe I can sit in an anatomy class with an 18-year-old who's probably way smarter than me. And essentially start over, right? And go a literal full circle. I started, like, the college that I'm attending now is where I first started as a community college when I was 18 or 19, graduating high school, and I'm right back where I started, like, full circle, which is humbling. It's hard, but we can do hard things. We can do hard things, whether it's running 100 miles or switching careers or trusting in something that you were told that you couldn't do, but knowing that you were made to do.
Oh my God, snaps for that. Oh man. I love, there's a chapter in my book called you can do hard things, I can do hard things. Like that was a mantra of mine going up when I was like in the worst shape of my life on my first backpacking trip with no training whatsoever. I was like, okay, I can do hard things. Like this is hard, but I chose this hard. Yeah. And I think that there's something to be said for that. Like I don't know that everybody can relate, but I know a lot of our listeners can, that doing something intensely physical that is incredibly difficult does lend that confidence. Like it started for me in skydiving. It's like, if I can jump out of a plane, why am I worried about a PowerPoint presentation for a client? Like, are you kidding me? Like I can do this. And with backpacking and stuff too, I was like, it just completely changed my life. I was like, when I got done with the TCT in 2018, we walked into our house. I was like, I just survived for 5 days in the wilderness with everything I need on my back. This house is too big and we have way too much stuff. And the house wasn't too big and we didn't have too much stuff. But I love hearing that. Every time I connect with somebody that's like, we can do hard things. And for me, I do a deeply physical hard thing. And then I go and crush other areas of life. If you had to have a conversation with younger Katie in the professor's office who's like, maybe you should do interior design. Is there anything that you would say to her now that might have swayed her choices? Or do you think that was exactly what she needed at the right time and now you're here and it's all coming together as you said it probably would?
I've actually thought about this quite a bit of, because when you feel like you went back to where you started, it's very introspective and you really question, and I think you can get sucked into like the what ifs and did I waste time and all the negative things start to come out. And I look back at things and I'm like, would I have changed it? Like if I had the opportunity to have choose, like if I could go back in time and, go right there at that space again and, either stick with the nursing or go onto the journey that I was put upon, like, would I have changed anything? And I would say no. I don't think I would have. I think that I needed the time. And that's hard to say because there was mistakes and I would change definite moments. I would change some decisions and I would change, I think I would try to be better, but as far as like a life change, I think that I wouldn't change anything. I'm glad for the journey that I was and the people that I've met along the way, and we'll always look back and be like, oh man, like you have like cringe moments. You're like, oh, dang it. But in those moments too, I think that those moments have also shaped me to be, who I am today. And I don't know if I would have gotten back to this place had I not had those moments. And so I don't think I would actually, looking back, I wouldn't change anything, even the cringe moments. Yeah. As much as I would love to say like, oh yeah, I would handle that differently. No, like I needed that moment to get me to the next thing. And sometimes you do need to like apologize for those moments and those choices and those things that you said or did or whatnot, and also go through the fear of like being told that you couldn't do something, to come back around and try to face that again. As maybe as long or as inefficient as that might feel, I don't think I would change it.
I've been thinking about this for myself as well. And on every single one of these interviews, I always end up talking about Catalina too much, but in the transition from, oh my God, this is the picture perfect place for us. Like this makes so much sense in this story. If I was writing this, the bow is we moved to Catalina and now we're based here. Sydney, in all of her author glory, has returned to the land from which she was healed. But ultimately, like the decision to leave and was such a unique decision on my trail of life. Like I hadn't ever in a career transition gone back to something that I had built that there was nothing wrong with. And that's not to say that Hiking My Feelings like stopped for the first 5 months of this year, but we also weren't executing programs. I felt, outside of writing the book, I felt pretty disconnected from the work that I was doing in the pursuit of trying to build something new. But when I think back, like the decision to come out here and to pursue this, the continuation of what we started here last summer, I wouldn't have changed anything, because like I've decided to live my life with as few what ifs as possible. Like I don't really have any regrets, because I'm always just trying it. And I got to give younger me, even just like 6 months ago me, credit for giving it a shot.
Yeah.
And I too, I wouldn't change anything about my path either. And I think when I asked you that question, I was like thinking that maybe there was something that you would change, but even in your articulation of the decision to pursue this career in the parks, like you knew you weren't ready. You said you knew you weren't ready. And like, yeah, there was the teacher and there were some things that felt weird, but I think like, I remember seeing those older adults when I was in community college, and then when I went on to university, and I never judged them for being older, but now I have a deeper appreciation for those folks, and I'm deeply inspired by the people that aren't afraid to go after, and maybe it's something new and some new education that they're seeking. Maybe they're coming back around to a thing that they had earlier in their life that they're ready to pursue now. But that takes guts. Yeah. Where do you find the guts? For anybody that's like, because I mean, this is a thing. Like,
this is a thing.
If we think about the things that your career has touched, directly or indirectly, we're talking about the mental health crisis in America. We're talking about the crisis of untapped potential, and like this notion that we have to do everything on, like there's only one way to move through the world, and that couldn't be further from the truth. I'm curious, like for anybody listening that might be thinking, I'm too young to do this in the case of your nursing, like I'm not ready, how to trust that. Or for the folks that are like, I'm staunchly stuck in this career, like you could have said, well, you know, I'm 11 years into this public lands work. I guess that's it for me. Like, what would you say to the people that are in one of those positions? Like, what do you have to offer folks that might be questioning what could come next for them?
Yeah. I think that it comes down, like, there's like definitely the courage and the bravery to recognize that I guess I have a couple different approaches to this. Like, is like one that kid that, you know, that person that might be like, I'm not ready for this, to trust that and then that's okay. And just because you might fail at something, like I failed at nursing the first time I did. Didn't make me a failure.
Hang on, say that again. Say it again for the people in the cheap seats. We need to hear that
one more time.
Hit it.
It's just, again, just because you fail at something does not make you a failure. We fail at stuff all the time. Like, whether that be, you know, gosh, trying to do that PowerPoint presentation, and maybe it's your first time trying to put this PowerPoint presentation together, you're like, you know, or that first big backpack or whatever it might be, a class, or you think that this is your thing and you love it, and then all of a sudden you get there and you're like, this is not my thing and I don't love it. That, you know, those you know, those like fails, whether they be small or epic, don't make us failures. And that it's okay to deviate, and it's okay to change your mind, and that doesn't make you irresponsible. That doesn't make you lost. It doesn't make you it doesn't make you lazy or confused or uncentered or anything like that. It just means that you're, you know, like for me, what I have found is that it just means that I'm still figuring it out. Life is hard. And I think that sometimes we treat, I had this vision at one point of this, like treating life as a chessboard, and where you can sometimes feel like a chessboard in someone else's, like a piece in someone else's chessboard, or you're trying to arrange your chessboard in just the right way and get so focused on these little pieces and whether or not you can move this one piece here and it will do this one thing, and it turns out to be this mess. And and of just like, okay, like letting that go. And I think sometimes we put an over importance on place or career, and we think, oh, if we can just get to that place, or if we can just get to that career, then everything will be okay. And I'm finding that that's not necessarily true. And it's really about like the people and the hard moments and the good moments. And, you know, people, like, from an outsider's perspective, like what I'm doing right now does look crazy. And I loved my career in the national parks. I loved it. I loved going to work. I loved the hard days. I loved the good days. I loved doing everything as simple as giving a program to organizing, working with you to organize Hiking My Feelings in the parks, to trying to open up a site after a fire blew through or a flood or whatever it could have was, like, and doing that problem solving of just those hard things. And I loved the work, and to find the courage to walk away from that and walk away from the community and the relationships that I built, and the impact and the fear that, like, oh my gosh, if I remove myself, like, what's that going to do? I'm going to leave a hole. And not to toot my own horn, but, you know, like you start to feel like responsible, and that guilt, and but then also you're like, okay, like if I leave a hole, then that's like, what a great spot for someone else to come in and jump right into that and, you know, make it their own. And it came down to knowing that, like, I don't know, I'm not a nurse yet. Like, I'm very much so in the journey, and
I'm in it.
And like my goal, is this thing. Like, I know, like, that's what I'm meant for, like that deep, I call it the place that no one goes. And for me, there's a very like spiritual connection that also plays into it. Where I know, like, for me, like, that's what God has like designed me to do. And I ran away from it for a long time, and now I'm trying to just crawl my way back to that place, and still making mistakes along the way. It doesn't mean and I would say, like, for anybody that is going through that right now, is just to I guess have courage and trust. I think sometimes we forget how to trust ourselves. And because we get that fear can sometimes be so overpowering, and the fear isn't a bad thing, but it's not the whole story. Fear can lead us into some cool places, but I think just listen to that little voice, because maybe it has a power, even though it's quiet and it's scary, it might have a powerful thing. And you're never going to be too old. You're never too old. Ever. I read this really great quote once. Is like, I wrote like my first book when I was 50. I married the love of my life when I was 70. I got my PhD when I was 75, and like next year I'll be 80. And I'm so excited to see, like, I don't think that was the direct quote, but
right, something
along those lines of this thing of like, we think that there's a certain way to do it, but, and there is a format that works for people, and that's not a bad format. Like, there's not a right or wrong way to do it. You just got to find your own way, and like, wherever that leads.
Yeah. And I think there's a lot of ways to live a life, and it sounds like something that Barry says a lot. And last year, or 2021 going into 2022, he challenged me because I was like, I need to have a path. I must have my whole life scheduled out to the minute. This is how I operate best, is when I have something to hold myself accountable to and for. He was like, hey, that's cool and everything, but like, if you're so focused on this trail you're building, this trail you're blazing, the path in front of you, you might miss the zip line that's off to the side. And sometimes zip lines are way more fun. And I was like, okay, so like, blinders off, be open to zip lines and slides. But I love what you were saying about the trust in yourself. Because we're like, in this culture, especially as women, I feel like we have been extracted from our capacity to trust ourselves. And that's a skill that we have to learn. Like, I don't think at least for me, like I wasn't if I was ever innately able to trust myself, I don't know at what point that stopped, because I don't have memory of that ever existing until like in my 30s, where I was like, I'm living my life on my terms and I don't care what success looks like for other people. And it sounds like one of the things we talk about in our programs is like, what kind of measuring stick are you using for your life and for success? Like we measure what we care about. And for me, coming up in corporate, like my measurement of success was millions of products purchased, thousands or hundreds of thousands of likes and comments. And then when I started Hiking My Feelings, I was like deeply frustrated that I wasn't getting those kinds of results. And then I remembered, oh, the corporations I used to work with have like multi-million-dollar marketing budgets. So of course we're going to see those kinds of results from the campaigns that we're running. And yes, it will take some time if we ever get to that kind of like tangible, measurable impact in that way with what we do now. But more importantly, what I've realized is like, there's so many different ways to live a life, and there's so many different ways to measure success, that self-trust piece and the part about failing and does not make you a failure. Girl, I mean, if I could just like tattoo that on everybody's forehead, like, because like imagine what would be possible if people weren't afraid of failing because they had this deep internal knowing that they aren't a failure. Like what else is possible on this planet? Like if I think about the progress and innovation and everything in the last 100, 200 years of existence in America in particular, like a lot of that has been exploiting resources. A lot of that has been driven by capitalism, which has served some great things. Like we have medications that save lives and all kinds of stuff, but for all of the success that we've seen and all of the progress that we've made as humanity, or as a country, I just can't help but think about how much untapped potential there is because people are so afraid to fail. And so I wonder, like, did young Katie feel, were there other areas in your life and other like forks in the trail that you're walking through this experience of being human, where you've had to reframe failure in that way? Because it sounds like this, like you said, you failed at nursing at the beginning. I failed at chemistry, so I stopped pursuing pre-med. I was like, oh, trauma informs how I study? Interesting. Let's ignore that. Suddenly I'm stupid. It's fine. Like just despite like a really long history of being pretty good at school, suddenly I'm an idiot. Nope, it's not how it works. Is there anything on your life path that, as you look back now, that felt like a failure that now feels like a stepping stone towards where you've been and where you're going?
Yeah, let me think about that. And I think, like, I think one of my biggest fears is fear itself sometimes. Someone kind of highlighted that in me at one point, and because that fear of failure, especially when you have trauma, is so strong. Because when you have trauma associated stuff, like you're always trying to fix something, right? You're always trying to like to piece something together to fix a situation, because you're like, oh, if I just do this fix, like we can get through another day, or we can get through this moment or whatnot. So you're always problem solving, constantly problem solving all the time, to not let, you're trying to hold up whatever it is from failing. And you start to do that with yourself. And I think that I've had lots of failures. And I was thinking about this the other day, of this phrase of, I'm unapologetically me. And I was thinking about how much I've been struggling with that phrase lately, because some of my strongest moments have been when I've had to apologize for who I am. Because I have hurt someone trying to struggle with your life, trying to be this human, not always getting it right. And having to apologize, to be like, I screwed up. And I'm sorry. And taking responsibility for that. Thank God I have been apologetically me sometimes, because it's through those moments when we're trying our hardest. Gosh, we're just trying our hardest, but sometimes you can leave a wake of pain, and unintentionally, but and going back and sitting with that person and having the that's where courage starts. Sometimes I think is examining those failures that don't just affect your life, but the fails that affect others in small or big ways, and thinking about you watch people move. I don't know about you or for anybody listening, you get those people watching moments where you just watch life happen around you, and sometimes I'm just struck by how kind people are with one another. And there's this great Hebrew word that I've just recently been introduced to and have done. It's called hesed, and there's 160 something translations of it, but it all comes down to trying to understand this kindness and compassion, and it's just trying to understand this this thing. And when you see it, people being that, there's just this kindness that's around, and people just when you see another human being that's struggling, or maybe you see someone else fail, you never, it's so rare when someone doesn't meet you in that failure. When you go back and you apologize and you're I screwed up. I don't think I've never, it doesn't mean that we're going to be best friends after that moment, but there's never not some kind of reconciliation and a meeting place there. And I think that, that's a lot of, sometimes we associate that fear of failure with these big things, oh, I'm changing careers, I'm doing this big thing. But I think it really starts with some of those small moments, and then, and then it built and then having the courage to go apologize can lead to courage to be maybe I'm just going to go try to hike that mountain, and maybe I'm going to go, do these other things. And, I'm getting, now I'm off topic, but I think, I've walked through so many failures, and just having, I think, the courage to admit the failure or the fail. And I think when we don't admit the fail, that's when we're in danger of becoming allowing ourselves to feel like failures. Yeah. And I think it's just turning around and facing that and taking responsibility for it, which is super scary and super hard.
Yeah. Well, and a phrase that comes to mind, so this year I joined the team at Outdoorist Oath, which is an organization that is, they have a namesake workshop called the Outdoorist Oath. So it's an educational platform similar to Leave No Trace, where they're committed to taking action for the planet, inclusion, and adventure. And they also have this nonprofit where that's what they do. I joined the team as a guest facilitator this year, and one of the phrases that I heard that really just kind of switched it up for me, well, actually there's a couple. One, when we all showed up to learn how to train, and we did our practice run through, they were we're honoring our try. And I was that. God, doesn't that feel so lovely?
So good.
And it's not necessarily a reframe on fear. It's not necessarily a reframe on failure, but just a different perspective through which to honor our efforts.
Yeah.
And even if that try does cause harm, that approaching it from that angle feels like a much safer and collaborative and less violent way to go about it. And another thing that has just been kind of rambling in my mind, especially as we've been talking about your connection to the night sky here in and out throughout this conversation, Jose Gonzalez, who's one of the co-founders of the Outdoors Oath, said that we should be striving to create constellations and not stars. And when I think about failure and fear and also being unapologetic and apologetic, and this idea of trying to find a place, a career, the people that allow us to feel fully expressed and to allow us to let our light shine. Like, we want to get to the point where we can feel like we can shine brightly like stars, but also to the point of like career transitions and shifting communities, not necessarily losing, because I don't think you'll ever lose what you've built here. But finding those different stars through which you can create a constellation, and that's the community that you're in. I love everything you've said about failure. I love what we've talked about doing hard things. And the question that I like to close with for everybody that I interview is, imagine you have this magic wand, and with it, you can bestow knowledge on everybody on the planet. You could erase a behavior that is harmful. You could use it on yourself. You could get that nursing degree and know that you like it. You could just be like, turns out I love it and I'm really good at it. If you had a magic wand and you could do literally anything with it, what would you do with it and who would benefit?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, you're welcome. Sydney, that's such a great question.
That's such a hard question. I'm like, do I want a magic wand? I don't think I want a
It's
magic
a lot of responsibility.
It's a ton of responsibility. Oh my gosh. This is such a hard question. And I'm going to take a coward's way out and do something really simple. And not get too philosophical because I'm like, oh my gosh, now I'm going to overthink the question. But something that has brought a lot of peace and joy and excitement to my life is the night sky. And I'm going to focus there. And so if I had a magic wand where I could create an experience for everyone, it would be to remove the light pollution. Not that lights are bad. Lights are great. Lights do a lot for us. Love lights. But just for like a minute, just reduce the light pollution so like everybody has this chance to like connect with the night sky. There's so much power and so much, it's just so beautiful to be able to see a sky full of stars, and it's such a tangible and intangible moment at the same time, and where you can feel so small and so big and so full of potential all at the same time. And I think it's one of these just like rare experiences where, because night is scary. Like, you go outside at night and, we're humans. We're not meant to be outside at night, and it's scary and you're intimidated and you're like, oh, like, and, but then there's like this, when you kind of face some of that fear and you go and you lay on that rock, or you go and lay in, on the sidewalk or on your lawn or whatnot, and take a minute to like look up and just to see these lights that are above you. Gosh, talk about change. Where you don't need to change a career, or you don't need to do this big scary thing, but like it's this micro change where you just go and you spend a couple minutes just looking at the stars. Oh, if I could give that opportunity to everybody, I think with the magic wand, I think I would enjoy that.
I'm glad that you said that, because one of the facts that Rebecca shared, Rebecca Jones is she's the cave manager at Crystal Cave, which is currently closed here at Sequoia Kings, but also a naturalist and interpreter interpreter?
She's a naturalist, yeah. Interpretive naturalist. Yeah.
Interpretive naturalist. We collaborate with her at our programs here at the Wolverton Service Camp and for our stewardship and self-care retreats. And one of the things she said it last year, and it has stuck with me, because you talk about this increasingly rare experience of being able to see the stars. 75% of children born today will never see the Milky Way because of light pollution. Mm-hmm. And you mentioned lights are good. We need lights. But I can't help but wonder, with all of the different systems and just not even traditions, like just things that oppress, things that keep us small, things that keep us from leaning into that curiosity. I can't help but wonder if like lights are really just trying to keep us disconnected from this ancestral connection to the night sky, because since time immemorial we've used it for navigation and connection and traditions and stories, and it's just you said you were taking the easy way out, but Katie, I love that answer. And for us to be able to host our programs here and to take people out to Sunset Rock and lay on the granite, like we do everything you just said that you want people to be able to do. We take a nice walk at sunset, and we, like, on our right is this forest that's been managed well, and like prescribed burns have been happening, and on our left is like destruction and matchsticks, and then we go lay on granite and we're getting super grounded, and then we like watch the stars and we learn all about it. It's just the experiences that are possible here because of the work that you've done, because of the work that Conservancy does, through the collaborations with organizations like ours, like that magic wand is real, and that experience is possible, and you can experience it like every Friday, Saturday, Sunday during the summer season. Join us for the Dark Sky or Night Sky, whatever Dark Sky Festival. Come on out. Is there anything else on your heart or mind in relation to this conversation or outside of it that you'd like to share with folks before we wrap it up?
I think just the national parks are an amazing place, and they represent so much, and they're not perfect places, and it can be hard to navigate the national parks, but they are, there's really something for everyone here, and it is, and like as we sit here in Wolverton and are talking about all these things, I'm looking around and thinking about how lucky we are to just be here, I think that, sometimes it is as simple as just getting outside and just going on a walk. Doesn't even have to be a hike. You can take the word hike out of it. Just go for a walk. And let that sun shine on you. Take a walk in the woods, or on the beach, or in the desert, or on the snow, or whatever it is, wherever it makes you, to get out there and allow yourself that time just to connect.
Well, I'd ask you where people can find you on the internet, but you've recently made the incredibly wise and honorable and frankly enviable decision to remove yourself from social media. So y'all are just going to have to figure it out. Maybe she'll be your nurse someday. But Katie, thank you so much for everything that you've made possible for us. Oh God, I'm going to cry. It's not lost on me that I'm sitting in a place where literally all of my dreams have come true, and that it wouldn't have been possible without your gift of belief that this was a good idea, and for helping us get dates on the calendar before Daniel joined the team, so it was like this was happening. So there was no question as to whether or not we could continue. We had our first event last weekend, and I woke up on Friday, and I am a naturally pretty anxious person, but especially when it comes to things I care about, because I want to do a good job. And after spending a week here before the event, I have never woken up with on an event day with my nervous system so regulated. Like, I have never been so calm. And I usually, I've done this program tons of times. I know what we're doing like the back of my hand. I've lived it. I created it. I teach it. And still, before every event, I write out a script for myself. Not that I'll ever use it, because I'm not going to sit here and okay, everybody, welcome to Wolverton Service Camp. And I'm just looking at a notebook and you'll never see my eyes. I didn't do any of that for this one. And this place that I got to spend so much time in last summer, and which was just a fraction of the time we're going to get to spend here this summer, gave me the capacity, bringing it all back around full circle, to trust myself. And I didn't have to write out a whole script for this weekend. And it was by far one of the most impactful retreats we've ever hosted. So thank you for making that possible.
Thank you.
And for anybody listening, find the Sequoia Parks Conservancy. That's sequoiaparksconservancy.org.
Yes.
And they're on social media. Give them a follow. Become a friend of the Sequoia Parks Conservancy to help fund the important work that they're doing in the park. If you're listening to this and you have time to sign up for a program, whether that's this year, next year, whenever, they host a bunch of different adventures with Hiking My Feelings and their own kinds of programs that they've created. Do all that, or find your local your closest national park and find their version of their conservancy and nonprofit partner. I hope that this episode has been a breath of fresh air. Thank you so much for joining us for this week's dose of wellness in the wilderness. Until next time, take good care of yourself, good care of each other, dream big, and be kind. We'll see you next time.
Since 1984, Sawyer has existed to support your wildest adventures. Learn about their advanced insect repellents and family of technical lightweight water filters at Sawyer.com.
Ready to find your wellness in the wilderness? Look no further than Hiking My Feelings. Through a combination of community and self-discovery, our programs are designed to give you the space and support to connect life's dots. If you're looking to figure out who you are underneath the stories you've been given and are ready to redesign the map of where you're headed with actionable steps and opportunities to dream big, we're here to walk alongside you. Whether you're a seasoned adventure enthusiast or brand new to the healing power of nature, we've got your back. Visit hikingmyfeelings.org today to download our free Trail Thoughts worksheets and learn more about Hiking My Feelings. Thanks for joining us on this week's show. We hope this episode has been a breath of fresh air for you and has inspired you to find your wellness in the wilderness. We will reconnect with nature and you again next week.